So what emerging global trends in agribusiness did you write down from revisiting that YouTube clip from the Nuffield conference last year? Some examples that I thought about were that existing export market access might actually reduce or disappear as a result of a slowing world economy and a flight towards protectionism. So where might you record this on a pestle or a 5 forces or SWOT analysis? With the pestle, you might put it under trends in global politics, for example. Under 5 forces, you might consider it as an example of an increase in competitive rivalry as competitors fight for a shrinking share of the export market, perhaps. In your SWOT, you may see this as a potential business threat. Another example that I picked up from visiting the YouTube clip was that new markets might actually open up for high quality niche products and services. And an example I thought of in relation to Tasmania was around food, wine, cooking, art, music, and how these different industries and brands that Tasmania is quite well known for become trails or events or tours, and this might be a good example of how the Tasmanian agribusiness industry can take advantage of this new market opportunity that might be presented as we see a continued rise of small brands. So where might you record this on a pestle 5 forces analysis or SWOT analysis? Well, on the pestle, I was thinking perhaps it might fit under an example of a socio-cultural shift in consumer wants. In a 5 forces analysis, it might appear as a threat of new entrants or increased competitive rivalry in existing markets. And perhaps in a SWOT analysis, it would be recorded as a potential business threat, but it could also be an opportunity for an agribusiness to tap into new markets with some product, service, packaging, marketing modifications perhaps. And another example that I picked up from watching that conference presentation was that there's a shift towards internet sales and service for businesses, and this actually alleviates the need and cost for many businesses perhaps to set up a shop front and maintain the cost involved in setting up and managing a retail outlet. So it also might well cut out the middleman, so it's a good way to streamline some business costs. But this could be an example of a way that an organisation takes advantage of changes in the retail landscape that we're seeing around the globe. So where might you record this on a pestle or a 5 forces or a SWOT analysis? Well, I was thinking that a pestle entry could come under technological and socio-cultural shifts perhaps. In the 5 forces analysis, it could be identified as a threat of substitutes, an increase in buyer power, or an increase in competitor rivalry. So where might you see it fitting best? And then in a SWOT, where might you put it? It's potentially an internal organisational strength if this is something that the agribusiness has already been thinking about and has developed some talent and systems to maximise their use of these kinds of new outlets. And it could also be seen as a business opportunity perhaps. So in the organisations where you work, have you seen such tools as these used? What about in your current job? If you were asked now or at some point in the future, do you think you'd be able to make a start on researching the organisation's external and internal environment by doing a bit of an environmental scan and then integrating and summarising that information into tools such as the pestle or 5 forces or SWOT analysis that we've discussed here? It's important to note, however, that for businesses it's not always possible to preempt certain changes. So sometimes it's likely that there will be change that is needed that is unable to be predicted in advance, or when an organisation's leadership team needs to deal with a distinct threat to the success of the organisation or respond to an immediate crisis. In those cases, they need to react now. So that process that might go on in a business on an annual or biannual basis sometimes doesn't hit the mark every single time, and an organisation needs to respond. So typically the more proactive that leaders and managers can be, and the earlier that they can implement change, the less costly the change process will be, and the less impact the change will have on the organisation. And this comes down to how and when the leaders of the organisation decide that they need to actually react and respond to particular crises or threats that are in the environment. Okay.